Brother Will. Brother Will, it's good to have you back. All right. We're live on sweet, sweet YouTube. Sorry, Will. I got distracted. My buddy Blake came over. Uh,
Hmm.
you might know Blake because you're a good old Southern boy, right? You ever
I
listen to Rick and
might.
Bubba growing up?
I've heard of Rick and Bubba. I didn't listen to it too much, but yeah.
Yeah, his son and I went to college together, and
Okay.
so he came over to watch the game tonight. He hasn't watched a lot of basketball, so I had to explain to him had just how good this team was, and also how spoiled he was for watching this game. Because like midway through the second half, he's like, "I don't know, man. You want to play some video games or something?" I was like, "No." This is the most relaxed I have been watching Auburn basketball in 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, it's nice.
Man, it's just Ryan was talking about this in the group chat. Like how unstoppable we are when we just lock in is something
Mm.
else, man.
Yeah, no,
All
for
right,
sure.
give me 1 second. I'm gonna blast us off here. Get
All
get the
right.
links out, and then we'll go live.
Sounds good.
We're gonna have a bit of an interesting MVP discussion, I think.
I think so too.
And man, you know what else makes me sad? Watching Ja'Kai Howard come in and just hit shots because it's like, man, what could have been, what
I know.
could have been.
You never know if he, not saying it's gonna happen, but if he can keep his head on straight, he might could steal some minutes here. I don't know. Tonight was good to get him in for a few minutes at least.
I don't think he's ever in danger of stealing minutes, but it would just be nice to know that, like, hey, late in the second half, instead of Chris Moore coming back in, if we need offense instead of defense, that we could bring Ja'Kai in. And who knows, maybe he'll hit a shot.
Yeah. No, that's fair. I get that.
All right. YouTube, who's in this chat already? Let's see who's here. We got oh man, we got 7 already in here. Let's go. Who's in the live chat? Oh, Jackson's here. and Ryan, Taylor Norman, the filling guest host with the Will McLaughlin as the goat.
What's up,
We
Taylor?
appreciate, we appreciate you, brother Norman. Good for you to be here. All right, Will, you ready to go live on this thing?
I am ready. Let's roll.
Let's do it. All right, everyone. We are coming off a massive 30-point win in the jungle, 106-76 over the Ole Miss Rebels. Yet another quad win for the resume. I'm joined here by Shooty Hoops Will McLaughlin. Will, how nice was it to watch a second half of basketball where we were not stressed?
This is nice. I enjoyed it. Can we do that more often?
Listen, we're all seeing it now. Everybody's trying to talk seeding, right? That's why the last week was so stressful. We had two teams fighting to get into the dance, taking their swings, just trying to get an upset and secure their spot in the big dance. And it's hard, man. Heavy lies the crown of number one. Auburn has set a school record with 7 consecutive weeks of being ranked number one. Everybody is coming for us, but tonight they absolutely did not have an answer for any of our guys, which I think is going to make for an interesting MVP discussion, which is how we always start off the Jungle Auburn podcast. Will, who is leading the way for you as MVP?
Oh man, this is a hard one tonight. Usually I come on here and I try to pick somebody different. I mean, for me, you could pick three or four guys tonight. I know Janai seems to be the guy every time. I mean, but I got to go Chad Baker Mazar. I got to give CBM some love tonight. He was a game time decision coming into this game, and you wouldn't know it. He set the tone early, and he was 8 of 12 from the field, was 4 or 5 from three. Had that really fun stretch at the very end where he hit back-to-back threes. Um, and he played under control tonight. There wasn't in a moment where, he did his usual antics, but it was nothing compared to what we've seen in some games. And I know people sometimes get frustrated with how sometimes He puts himself in situations where he does a little too much, but he did well. I thought he did well tonight. But I'm gonna go CBM. But you can make an argument for Janai. You can make an argument for Miles. I mean, this is one of those nights where you can't really go wrong. But I'm gonna give CBM some love tonight.
I mean, look, so much went right for us tonight, but we had, I believe, for what was only the second time this season, two players score more than 20 points in a game, and Chad Baker Mazara was one of them. He finished with 22 points on 4 of 5 shooting from deep and 8 of 12 from the floor. But Will, on a historic free throw shooting for night for us, Chad Baker Mazara was only 2 of 4 from the charity stripe, my man. How can you give such poor
Yeah,
free throw shooting your MVP?
I know, I know. If there's one thing that didn't go right tonight, that was him missing 2 3 throws. I know that's tough, but I like to be different sometimes. But yeah, no, it's totally a fair assessment.
Listen, one of the things that impressed me most about Chad Baker's game tonight was his defense on Sean Padula. Padula absolutely torched us. I believe he had almost 30 points in Oxford. If it wasn't 30, it was 29.
29. It was 29.
Yeah,
Yep.
when we went against him in Oxford tonight, and Chad Baker Mazara got switched onto him a lot and got a fantastic block on him late in the game when they kept trying to put together these rallies to get the game close. I won't even say win; they just wanted the game to be close and somewhat respectable. And his defensive Sean Padula was pretty good. But you know whose defensive Sean Padula was even better? Miles Kelly. Miles
Yes.
Kelly finished with 13 points tonight, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, a steal, a block on 3 of 5 shooting from deep and 4 of 7 from the floor. Will, tell us about how Miles was attacking the rim tonight.
Yeah, especially in the second half. Like he hit his 3 threes early in the game, but then he had 2 drives in the second half where he attacked the rim. And yeah, they talked about it on the broadcast. He's in the SEC play. He's kind of gone more to a shot fake. He'll act like he's shooting a three and he'll take the ball to the rim. I love seeing that from Miles Kelly, and it definitely opens up a new level for him as there's potential. We've talked about guys and potential pro prospects, but if Miles can do that on a more consistent basis, as well as play defense, shoot three, he's got a shot at the NBA. And I'm not saying that as a homer, but I'm just, he's got
I
that
mean, look,
potential.
he's got the frame for it at 6'6". He's very clearly, like, at the very least deserving of a two-way look from one of these teams,
Yeah.
or he'll wind up going G League. He's a fantastic player. He's been amazing for us. He continues to crash the boards in the best way as one of our guards. I mean, all 3 of his rebounds were defensive, so he is all about denying teams that second look. But speaking of guards, look at Denver Jones's game tonight. A quiet 13 points. He did a lot of his damage in the second half, and of course, once again, a ton of damage at the free throw line. Perfect 5 for 5. But Will, a goose egg in the turnover column. How valuable is that for another Denver Jones game without a single turnover?
Yeah, no, it's very valuable for him to not have turn the ball over, and that's one thing that there's games where Denver has some of these turnovers that just make you scratch your head. There's a couple of times he just throws the ball away, but it is big for him to not turn the ball over. We only had one, Tahad only had one turnover tonight. I think our turnovers I'm looking at here on the stat sheet. I think we had not counting eight or nine turnovers tonight, so 8 actually. If I'd read the totals, I'd see that instead of trying to count them one by one. That would help.
Well, that's why we got once again, we got the Justin Ferguson box score up here. But listen, podcast listener, and especially YouTubers, it is not as easy to read on the screen and also still podcast at the same time. So shout out Will for being a fill-in host. We're throwing a lot of numbers at you. And listen, you're right. 8 turnovers under 10. That's always Matt's line.
Yeah.
When we have a really good game is having less than 10 total turnovers.
But to answer your question, yeah, no, it's definitely important for him, having 0 turnovers, and Denver's just such an underrated part of this roster, and he's really had a good February. After the Florida game aside, especially after that Florida game, he's been very solid on both ends of the floor, and that's the Denver Jones that if he plays that way, it's a hard team to beat for sure. But we always talk about, we talk a lot of offense, but his defense is just so invaluable. And we talked about Padula in game one, against Auburn. He had 29. He had 14 tonight. Matt Morrell only had 12 points tonight. And I think Morrell and Padula are the two guards that Ole Miss has that really can put a lot of points on you in a hurry. And I think, going in, that's a team they have a lot of scoring on that team. I think they had 6 or 7 1,000-point scores over their career. So those guys know how to score a lot of points. So I think just our overall defense, not always great for 40 minutes. There was definitely, the last 8 minutes of this first half was not great, but all in all, they locked in the second half and they were able to make this
we'll blame it on Charles Barkley getting into the Redmont a little bit, especially with that interview. That seemed like that was going on in the second half there. But Will, I'm sorry, I've let us get too far into this podcast without talking about Superman. I mean, good grief. Janai Broom, it's another one of those games where we have 4 and you don't. He
No.
played 31 minutes tonight, despite sitting for the last 5, which means he played the majority of the first and second halves tonight. 7 of 12 from the floor. He had 9 rebounds, so he finished just shy of yet another double-double, but 24 points and 4 assists to go along with 2 blocks. And Will, tonight, Janai Broom played a game after my own heart. 10 of 12 from the free throw line. He hit his free throws, Will.
Yeah, and he was 9 of 9. He made his first 9 tonight. So yeah, it's giving an MVP tonight, man. It's like you could give Janai the MVP every single game, but then what would be the debate, But yeah, no,
Well, listen,
it's hard to argue that.
Listen, I am so tempted to give it to Janai Broom, specifically because, like you talked about, that 9 for 9 start was huge and stretch in the league. It was hack a Shaq inside for them all day today. They went after him. They went after Chaney, who finished 3 of 3 from the line with 13 points. Shout out Chaney Johnson. You're not making our MVP discourse tonight, but he is the 6th man on this roster that averages double figures. I mean, you talk about a guy that absolutely elevates the ability of this team. It's Chaney Johnson to a T. So I'm tempted to give it to Janai Broom, but I have to remind myself, Chad Baker-Mazara showed up on the injury report again as questionable. There was some doubt about whether or not he was going to play. And all he did was score 22 points. I mean, it's the Chad Baker-Mazara flu game.
Yeah. No, I mean, you can make a good argument for either one of these guys. I know you've made the argument for Janai. I've made the argument for Chad. Can't really go wrong either way.
Well, look, we're gonna go.
We're gonna go missed free throws by Chad. We're getting technical, but yeah, no, it's
all right. So I'm looking here on X, and right now, just like you and I will, the vote is split almost down the middle, with Chad Baker-Mazara leading with 57%, Janai Broom with 43%. Nobody else is even sniffing it. So Jackson has sent me the link to our Reddit thread here. We're going to go through some Reddit threads, and then we'll check the YouTube comments, and we'll see if y'all can help us solve this mystery of who the MVP could be. We got Bolt 585. I want to give it to CBM. Dude was unconscious tonight. I mean, I don't know if he took some NyQuil before the game and blacked out. He might have, the way that he was shooting. Ibum Fuzz, Broom, easy vote, dominated on offense.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's absolutely right. But in a game in which our defense was so effective, particularly in the second half, you watched Ole Miss go at Janai Broom again and again and again, and they got their points inside. Let's take a look at the points in the paint here. We finished with 44 points in the paint to Ole Miss's 30. So we dominated pretty heavily in the points in the paint, but I think that was where Ole Miss got their bread buttered there. Keep Cool Coolidge is here. Janai Broom is number 1 in points, rebounds, assists, and blocks. Incredible performance. Win rebounds and assists by 13 as a team. That is incredible team basketball. I mean, that's why we're having such a hard time with this MVP discussion. Sorry. Nick 200117 is coming in here. Janai Broom is 2nd assist. Tahad had 6 tonight. Shout out to Tahad Pettiford. He didn't show up in the box score of points, but definitely played an excellent game, particularly at the end of the first half. Ribs and Whiskey, the Reddit legend here. Broom, obviously, but CVM deserves some discussion with the way that he played. AU Bear, he's here. Janai, they couldn't stop him. That opened it up for everyone else. And then TG Rogan, CBM, Broom was great, but he's always great. I don't want us to take Janai Broom's greatness for granted, but man, I mean, Janai Broom is great every night, and he was great through a tough stretch of games where we won them in the single digits. When you see Chad Baker-Mazara and Denver Jones and Miles Kelly and Chaney Johnson lock in like this, you can just see the other level that it elevates this team to. It's the difference between winning uncomfortably by 7 at home against Arkansas and winning by 30 against a team that is going dancing in March in Ole Miss.
Yeah, and
Baker-Mazara and Denver Jones and Miles. Sorry, I had the volume up on the YouTube there.
No, you're good. I was trying to figure out. No, and you mentioned it earlier, like Ole Miss is in the tournament. They're not fighting for their tournament lives. Georgia and Arkansas came to Auburn, and they were. And a lot was made of those narrow wins, but let's not forget Georgia came back after that Auburn game and beat Florida last night. Arkansas came back from Auburn last Wednesday and beat Missouri Saturday. So those wins look even better now if you look at it, if you think about it from that perspective. So
all right. I've got some good news for you, Will. We've got Gumptown Tigers here in the chat saying Broom is MVP. Tucker Robinson says Broom. AU Bear, we already heard from the Reddit thread, but he's here on YouTube. Love you, AU Bear. Thanks for being here. But Ryan Storm and Norman has stormed into the chat with his vote for CBM. I think that officially makes me outvoted. So, Will, we got to crown him. Every time you come on this podcast, you're fighting for him. And tonight you got him his crown. Chad Baker Mazzara,
All
you
right.
are the MVP of the Ole Miss game.
How about it?
So, Will, let's break down what happened in that first half. I mean, it seemed like an offensive clinic almost from both teams. We were shooting pretty well. We scored 50 points in the half, which is huge for us, but we also gave up 40 points. What were you seeing from Auburn in that first half?
Yeah, I think both teams combined to make their first 7 shots from the field. Auburn came out guns a-blazing tonight, just from the 3-point line, and then getting the ball in the paint to Janai. And it was a 36-14 game early, and you're like, okay, well, we've seen this before where Auburn gets out to a really hot start. The other team kind of makes a run, and Ole Miss did. I think that timeout Chris Beard called, it was like 38-20, really settled Ole Miss down. They kind of changed their defense a little bit. Auburn had a little bit of a 4 or 5 minute stretch there where they just couldn't put it together on either side of the floor, and that's when Ole Miss made a 7 or 8 point game late in the first half. But offensively, the second half, you know, they just, Auburn wore them out in the paint, and then they were able to knock down some threes in the second half and get into the free throw line. There was a lot of fouls in this game. Nobody fouled out, but there were a lot of fouls in this game. Auburn had 22 fouls. Ole Miss committed 25 fouls. There's a lot of free throw shooting. Both teams shot relatively well from the free throw stripe. So just too much Auburn tonight on both sides, really.
Big time. And like you were talking about, Ole Miss went on their run when they were down 18 in the first half to make it close. But Matt loves to talk about the way that we close halves. And Jackson is always big on this. We talk in this podcast a lot about not letting go of the rope. And this was an example where Ole Miss got it close. It was 38-44 with 2 minutes to go after a Sean Padula 3-pointer. And you think, okay, here we go again. Ole Miss has got some dudes. They're coming for us. They're going to make it tight down the stretch. And then what do we do? Janai Broom grabs a board, hits both of his free throws. Again, huge. Ole Miss comes down the floor and jacks up a 3-pointer. Chaney Johnson grabs the defensive rebound, runs up the floor, and gets a crazy alley-oop dunk from Janai Broom to stretch that lead back to 8. Then before you know it, Ole Miss had a tough free throw shooting night. They got fouled there at the end. They went 1-1 from the line, and then Todd Pettiford just comes down the floor, and he is poetry in motion as a point guard. I love seeing him on the ball with the floor in the open space, because when he can put a move on a guy, his acceleration towards the basket is next level.
Yeah, and I think that play at the end of the half was really a huge turning point in the game. Auburn had a 8 point lead. Ole Miss got the ball. They took a ill-advised shot, and Todd Pettiford comes down and puts a beautiful teardrop floater in to make it a 10 point margin at half. Didn't hit the free throw, but I thought that was a significant play going into the locker room. It gave Auburn kind of a little bit of momentum and a little bit of juice back into the building and for the team. So definitely a big play. We talked a little bit about Tahad earlier. He had 6 assists and 4 rebounds. He only scored 4 points tonight, but Tahad really, a really solid game. I thought on both ends of the floor, and he only had 2 fouls. Tahad sometimes gets into foul trouble. He only committed 2 fouls tonight. He had a foul at the very beginning when he came in, and he only committed one more foul the rest of the game. So, all around, try to shout out as many guys as I can, but yeah, shout out to Hod for sure.
Yeah, I mean, shot selection is always key. I mean, we saw that's what bit Ole Miss the end of the first half, is not being willing to give up the ball and feeling like they only have a few guys that can make plays. Auburn having so many weapons and so many guys that trust each other to find open looks. I mean, Janai Broom had another one of those crazy no look to the corner passes early. He got double teamed inside and found Miles Kelly in that corner spot where he just goes and sits at the beginning of games now, it seems like, and waits for that double team to come. And these guys know where the other person is going to be on the floor. The other person is where they're supposed to be. I mean, Matt used to talk about this all the time. The tough part with having a lot of guys rotating and a lot of guys playing a lot of different positions is you don't always know if you can count on somebody to be where they're supposed to be on either the offensive or defensive end. That's what leads to you reaching in with these ticky-tack fouls at the front of the line if you don't know you've got somebody behind you. That's what leads to you taking a bad forced look inside when you don't know that there's a guy on the wing where he's supposed to be that's wide open when you get double teamed and trapped. So the longer this team has played with its sort of 6 to 7 guys that are their main contributors, the tighter this offense continues to look.
Yeah.
And we have to talk about Ole Miss's performance tonight because, they got blown out by 30, but they did not play badly. all
No.
things considered. They shot 47% from the floor, 36% from deep. And honestly, they put it together towards the end. 74% from the free throw line is a respectable number. But where they absolutely got the doors blown off of them is in points off turnovers, points in the paint, and total rebounds. I mean, we out rebounded them by 13. So you can see they didn't take a lot of bad shots because they didn't get to take a lot of shots. We denied them a lot of those second looks.
Yeah. And Auburn's a much bigger team than Ole Miss. So out rebounding them by 13s, it's, we're supposed to do that. So it's good to see that Auburn did what they were supposed to do.
And then again, winning the assist battle is so huge. You talk about that court vision, you talk about understanding your offense. We have a lot of opinions about Chris Beard on this podcast that we're not going to get into. But one thing you cannot deny about Chris Beard, the man can coach. I mean, some of those inbounds plays that he looked were Bruce Pearl-esque. They manufactured clean looks out of thin air. They were exactly what they needed in the moment. You can just tell his play calling is so good, especially with these guys that he has. He went out and got the dudes he needed from the portal, guys like Padula, guys like Matthew Morrell. I mean, he's put together a really good team. They're just running into a buzzsaw. 20 assists to 7. That is an incredible number.
Yeah. No question about it. Yeah. And, like I said earlier, Ole Miss is going to be a tournament team. I think you're probably looking at a 6-7 seed potentially. Maybe I'm off there. I'm kind of speaking off the top of my head, but they're solidly in the field. So
well, look, Will, when it comes to the SEC, there's so much that's going to happen over these last 2 weeks that trying to guess where people are going to be seated in the SEC tournament is already a challenge. I mean, we're already thinking about all the different tiebreakers with how we can make sure that Auburn gets that 1 seed in the SEC. When it comes to the NCAA tournament, I mean, they put the bracket up. The 1s and 2 seeds could all flip. It would not be impossible for that to happen.
I think right now you're looking at. I'm hard pressed to think they're going to put 3 SEC teams on the one line. I think 2's fair. It's Auburn and pick one: Alabama, Florida, Tennessee. That's kind of where I'm at. I think Duke and Houston are your 1 seeds right now. If I'm sitting here, guessing what they're going to do today.
Well, that's not entirely wrong to think because Duke has very nearly wrapped up the ACC regular season title, and I believe Houston wrapped up the Big 12 regular season title last night.
Clinched a share on Monday night in Lubbock. Yes.
Yeah. So I think they only need 1 or 2 more wins as their magic number to clinch outright.
Which that Houston team is 9-0 on the road in the Big 12. And that Big 12 conference is really, really good. It's not as good as the SEC this year, but that's a really good Big 12 conference. So
it is a slight bit better than the ACC is this year. I mean,
just a bit. Yeah.
Duke played a conference game against Miami that I think was a quad 3 game last night.
Yeah.
Just incredible. And that's what's got to make what Janiah Broome is doing so much more impressive. I mean, listen, Cooper Flagg is obviously a very talented basketball player. Cooper Flagg did against Auburn what he's done against a lot of these smaller teams and less talented teams. Now, granted, that was early on in the year. We were coming all the way from Hawaii to play that game. So I don't know how much of it that factors in. But what Janiah Broome is doing against the country's toughest schedule cannot be overlooked. I mean, the SEC is probably going to get 8, 9, maybe 10 teams into the dance this year, depending on the way things shake out. And
maybe 12.
Yeah. I mean, those odds improved tonight. Vanderbilt went into College Station and upset the Aggies of Texas A&M 86-84. Will, we got Texas A&M coming up next week. Do you think we could go on the road and steal one in College Station from Buzz Williams?
Well, we got a game before that.
Yes, we do. But we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that in a minute.
More excited about that game. We'll get into that in a minute. No, there's a lot of history in that. No, that's a big win for Vanderbilt. A team that, they were kind of right on the edge of I wouldn't say they're definitely not a lock, but I definitely think they should be in at this point. But yeah, that's a heck of a win for Vanderbilt. That I live in Nashville, so I've seen a little bit more Vanderbilt probably than most people, and it just. Stackhouse was never a good fit for that team, and what Mark Byington has done this year, and I've said this once and I'll say it again, there's 2 or 3 coaches in the SEC that deserve the SEC Coach of the Year, and I have zero problem with it. Bruce, Mark Byington, and Dennis Gates at Missouri. I think all 3 of those guys, you can make a compelling argument for all 3 of those guys for SEC Coach of the Year, and you wouldn't be wrong if you're thinking of that. I just think what Vandy's done is it's incredible in year 1 of Mark Byington what they've done. So. Shout out to Vandy.
Yeah. I mean, look, you're not going to get an argument there, but Will, you're right. We can't overlook what's going to happen on Saturday. Will, talk to me about what we're trying to do at 1 p.m. Eastern on Saturday.
Make history. Make history in a lot of ways. You want to know the last time Auburn has won at Kentucky?
Tell the
Janu-
listeners, Will.
January 9th, 1988. I wasn't born yet. 37 years. Auburn has lost 20 games in a row at Rupp to Kentucky. 21 at Rupp in general. They played an SEC tournament there, I think back in the 90s, maybe the early 90s, maybe the late 80s. Auburn has not won a game there in over 10, 11,000 days. If there's a team that's going to do it, it's this team. Um,
Well, I got to tell you, I don't like the way we match up with Kentucky. You talked tonight about how we have a size advantage over Ole Miss, and it was evident
mm,
on the floor tonight. Kentucky is one of those teams. They're full of guys that are going to go pro. They haven't been able to put it together and string together a lot of wins because you need a lot of different skill sets to win college basketball. But they're big, they're long, and they can shoot the three ball over you if they have to. And that was the recipe for how Florida came in and beat Auburn in Neville. So if we go into Lexington and steal that win and make history and reset the streak, how are we going to do it?
I mean, if you play the way you played tonight, you got a good shot. And I think the biggest thing is keeping Janai and Dylan out of foul trouble. That if Auburn gets into foul trouble, they're gonna be in a lot of trouble. Like you said, they've got a lot of size. Kentucky can score. Kentucky can put 100 on you just as easy as as an Auburn and Alabama or Florida. They've had games where they score a lot. So this I think this game has the potential to be in the 80s, 90s for sure. But we're gonna need you know I think this is a game that we need Agent Zero to Todd Pettiford to have one of those 20-point games on the road that he's had a couple times this year. Last couple games, he's not shot the ball well. His scoring production's a little bit down. I think this is a game that Todd Pettiford has to put on his back and make some big shots. And he's done that. He's capable of doing it. And I can very well see him doing that again on Saturday.
I mean, Kentucky has been one of the most confusing teams to watch this year. They started SEC play in January at home against Florida, a game they won 106 to 100, a game in which Florida really played about six guys, all told. They only had six guys that averaged more than 10 minutes, and those six guys were all 22 minutes plus. Then the next week, they went on the road to the Steg and lost to Georgia. Now, Georgia's not a bad basketball team,
No.
but Georgia does not have nearly the amount of talent that was supposed to be on that Kentucky roster. And it's just been up and down since then. I mean, winning on the road against Mississippi State, losing at home against Alabama, losing on the road against Vanderbilt. They've just been so up and down. The thing that scares me is which of these Kentucky teams is going to walk into Rupp.
Yeah.
And the only thing that makes me feel even slightly better about it is our overall standing. I mean, we're talking about making history right now. And Will, our magic number after tonight is just two.
It's two.
It's
Yep.
two to guarantee a share. And guess what? If we win against Kentucky and A&M, we can pretend like it doesn't matter what happens in the IBOB. But then the IBOB just becomes salt in the wound. If we happen to drop one on the road, we get our biggest rival at home on a Saturday to wrest sole possession of the title from their hands. And if you think the boys are not going to be up for that, I don't think you have your finger on the pulse of this team. This team runs on hate. And you
Yeah.
want to talk about a way to knock Alabama off that one seed line, a clinching victory over them, and then watching them get run out of Lexington in the SEC tournament could push Alabama off the one line. And that would almost be as sweet as getting the number one overall seed ourselves.
Well, and Alabama finishes at Tennessee. They host Florida, come to Auburn. So really, in theory, if Auburn can go into Lexington and win Saturday, and Tennessee beats Alabama, that's it. We go to A&M next Tuesday, and we've locked it up. Now, you asked about that A&M game earlier. I really wanted to get to Kentucky first. That A&M game is the trap game to end all trap games. Let's face it. I thought Vanderbilt was too. We overcame that. But that A&M game, we always, for whatever reason, A&M is so annoying to play. Buzz seems to have Bruce's number all the time. And like that A&M team, that's a tough loss for them tonight. They're gonna bounce back. I'm trying to remember who they even play Saturday. Oh, they go to Florida Saturday.
Whew.
So they go to
And,
Florida
and,
and then they
and you
come
know what's
back and host
crazy?
us.
They're
Yeah.
probably going to win that game. They're probably going to win that game just because
Yeah.
of the way that the SEC has been this year. The way that teams have seesawed back and forth from inexplicable losses to unpredictable victories. And I mean, if you look at Texas A&M's February, you can see why Buzz Williams is a great matchup for Bruce Pearl as a coach. He's winning games against South Carolina 76-72, against Missouri, a red hot Missouri team 67-64, against Georgia 69-53. I mean, he's winning some clunkers where the pace of the game is really getting slowed down. But where I think we have an advantage this year is this is Bruce Pearl's best half court team ever.
Absolutely.
You want to play slow ball, we will find the holes in your defense and attack them. One of the things I was most impressed by tonight, and I saw it from Chaney Johnson and I saw it from Miles Kelly more than I have all year, is waiting for that trap to come onto Janai Broome and seeing guys cut to the basket from the trap, recognizing ahead of time what defenses are trying to do. And I think we're going to see a lot of that trapping happening when we go to College Station.
Yeah, no question about it. And like you said, they play a lot of clunkers. They win a lot of games in the 60s and 70s. When you get them into the 80s, they usually don't win.
Yeah. So that's gonna be our recipe, I think, in College Station. Get out to one of these fast starts, score 10 or 12 points in a row to open up the game, and then just keep them at arm's length when they want to slow it down and get into that half court set. Go 2 for 2, hit a couple of 3-pointers, and then continue to just play that aggressive, dominating defense and denying those second chance points. I think that's our recipe. And then we get to the Iron Bowl of basketball, and from there it's just gravy, right?
Yeah, as gravy as it can be. Alabama's been a better road team this year. They've been better on the road than they have been at home. So that is not a gimme at all.
Well, listen, I would never say that it's a gimme, but it would be nice to be playing that game with house money.
Absolutely. No,
I think playing Alabama with a title on the line is where you start to feel a little bit of that pressure that you want guys to come out loose, play hard, play their game. And, even if you go into halftime down by 8 or 10 points, still feeling like, we're at home, the jungle's going to come alive for us. All we got to do is play our game and get back in it.
Which, shout out to the jungle tonight. I think the last couple of games, it's not been its normal jungle self. And I know some people called them out. I'm not going to name any names. You're listening to one of them that may or may not have said something to the jungle about y'all got to step.
Shout out Pablo.
But they were great tonight. Y'all were great tonight. And this team feeds off of their energy. And I think that's another reason they played. The energy was a lot better in there tonight. It felt like it was night and day compared to the last couple home games. So I got to give the jungle credit where credit's due.
Absolutely.
I always will sit here and get on the jungle when they don't do what they're supposed to do, but they did a great job tonight. And you and I both know they will against Alabama. There's no doubt about it. They will be ready for that game.
100%. They were up for the penultimate home game, which is good to see because everybody's going to get up for the Iron Bowl of basketball. Will, we're sitting here at 26-2. We are 1 win away from tying the record for most quad 1 wins ever in a season, and 2 away from breaking that record. Do you think this team can do it?
Absolutely. Why not us? I think
not us?
If you split these next 2 games, that Alabama game becomes that chance to break that quad 1 record. And I think, and honestly, I'll say this, like, it's not going to surprise me if they split these next 2 games. It's not going to shock me if they drop both these 2 games because these are hard games. But to win championships, you've got to win these hard games. So,
what makes me so confident about this team is how many hard games they've won. I mean, you didn't get to come on the pod at all last year, but I know you could feel this with how we just dominated teams and won a record tying 25 games by double digits. You didn't get to see that team put with their back against the wall too often.
Yeah.
This team has had its back against the wall so many times. We've had so few games like this one where you can put your feet up and say, I wonder if Janai is going to have another 20-10 game tonight. Oh, look at that. Chad got to 20 points. I wonder how, look at that. Ja'Kai Howard came in. How nice to see him back on the floor. We've gotten so few of those opportunities. This has been the deepest, toughest SEC ever. We played the hardest record in road in Maui. We played the most ranked non-conference opponents ever. And we've come through it all with just 2 losses.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, there's games this year that we've won that it's just like, man, this team last year, maybe the year before, we don't win those games. This team's different. This team's got the guards that can, and at the end of the day, like the guard play is a lot. It's gotten a lot better this year, and they're getting the ball to number four when they've got to get the ball to number four, and that's huge.
That's the key. I mean, listen, you've got the best player in college basketball. Big dogs got to eat. You say it on X all the time.
I do. You got to let the
So,
big
Will,
dog eat.
we didn't have you here for our SEC preview. We didn't have you here for our season preview. So we don't get to look back at some of your predictions for the things that would have made you happy or the things that would make you
Oh
feel
boy.
satisfied. But we're here now with everything in front of us. The regular season title is within reach. The SEC tournament title is within reach. Dare we say it? The Final Four is once again within reach for this team. What does this team need to do to make you feel like they lived up to their opportunities?
So it's going into the season, and I'll say this because we're getting ready to play Kentucky. Like I had this team, and I'll sit here and admit it. I thought this team was a 22-9 team because I know that, and so I was wrong, and I'm willing, and I'm happy to admit that I was wrong. I always like to have realistic expectations. I thought this team would be really good. I don't think me or a lot of people thought this was a 26-2 team good, especially with the non-conference schedule. If we're being honest with each other,
Go follow Josh Dubb's Twitter feed. He's outing every single person as we pass the line of who said.
I've been at it already. Yeah. So, but what I will say is, like, for me, outside of the national championship, the one thing that I wanted this year was for Auburn to break that streak at Rupp. So that to me is great. But as far as like the end of the season goes, you know, obviously we want to cut the nets down in San Antonio. This team has to get out of the first weekend. They cannot get bounced in the first round. They cannot get bounced in the second round. That to me, if we get to the second weekend, then whatever happens at that point, I will be happy with how this season went, to answer your question.
Okay.
Obviously, we know what the goal is, but to me, it's get out of the first weekend. Get out of Lexington with 2 wins. And you just it's all about matchups in the tournament. You just never know who you're gonna get. You could get a really hot 8 or 9 seed that gets in your bracket. My gut says, and if I'm right in 3 or 4 weeks, I'm sorry, but my gut says that UConn is sitting there as a potential 8-9 matchup
Yep. I've been seeing
in
it.
that game. Yes, I know they have not been good this year, but UConn's a 2-time defending national champions. That team knows how to win in March. That would not
And
be a matchup I would be very comfortable with.
there's a lot of teams that are on that line that are
There's some
old
good 8-9
school,
teams.
old
Yes.
guard. I mean, we're talking like that could be a Kansas, that could be a UConn, that could be a Gonzaga.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just imagine that you play a hot team like a Vermont or a Belmont coming off, winning almost 30 games in their season. The first round's always tough. You survive that one, and then you've got somebody who completely blew their season, whose only shot at redemption is to get to the Sweet 16 and try to make a run to the Final Four. That is not who I want to be playing in that second round for sure. But
Yeah.
Will, I just have one other question for you because we heard Charles talk about this a little bit tonight. And, I said when we started SEC play that I thought this team was good enough to double eagle. Bruce has never won both championships in the same season. We've won a lot of regular season titles. We won a lot of tournament titles. We've never done them both in the same year. Is that something you think is worth chasing, trying to win those 3 tough games in 3 days at the end of the year?
I've heard this a lot, and I'm honestly kind of on the Charles bandwagon here. I honestly am. Now, I say this, you have to win one game in Nashville. If you win one, like the goal for me, it's like if they lose in the semifinals, they lose in the semifinals. You get an extra day, or you get an extra day of rest that way, because Lexington is a Thursday, Saturday site. So you play 3 really tough games in 3 days. You got a quick turnaround. You travel to Lexington, probably you go home. You're home for a day. You go to Lexington Tuesday. So it's a short turnaround. We saw last year they won 3 games in 3 days. They had to go to Spokane, which I'll say this, after getting sent to Birmingham 2 years ago, we kind of deserved getting sent to Spokane last year. I know it
No,
sucked,
this is the
but
Homer podcast, Will. The Homer podcast.
listen, I call it how I see it. I know, but yeah, no, it is what it is. So I would say definitely need to at least make the semifinals of the SEC tournament. But I would say, like, if you've looked at like seeding and stuff in the SEC tournament, like I don't think they do as far as after Thursday or Wednesday or Thursday, they don't, and it just doesn't matter that much to me anymore. And I'm saying that as a guy that lives in Nashville, that's 15 minutes from Bridgestone Arena, can go watch these games. It's hard for me to get too pumped for the SEC tournament, especially after what happened last year. They won the SEC tournament and go out in the first round. So
I
I
mean,
see the
I
argument,
talked about this.
but I see the argument both
Well, look,
ways. I do.
no, because I talked about this a little bit. You know, that Virginia team that stole the national championship from us back in 2019. They lost to Duke in the regular season, and then they lost to Duke in the ACC tournament championship game, but won the regular season and went on to win the national title without ever getting over that hurdle.
Yeah.
So if we wound up in a situation where we somehow lost to Florida in the SEC championship game, because I don't think we'd see them in the semifinals. I think they're still tracking for that 2 seed
Yeah.
if we take care of business going forward. Um,
Well,
it's not the end of the world. We match up really badly with Florida, and Florida's a very talented basketball team.
yeah.
So if that's what knocks us out of the SEC tournament, I don't hit panic mode. I think you're right. I think you just go ahead and take the extra day of rest.
Yeah.
But I'm so tempted to be Team Jackson. I don't think you ever want to start playing to lose once you're getting to this end
Yeah.
of the year where it's lose and go home. I think
Yeah.
that's a
No,
dangerous precedent to set for yourself to take that foot off the gas.
I agree. No, and that's fair. And I don't think this team would do that. I think this team would definitely go for an SEC tournament title. But it is a fair argument. It is a fair question to ask. Um, how that goes. But yeah, if you're asking me if I want an SEC tournament title or a national championship, I mean it's clear as day
That's
what
an easy choice.
everybody's picking. It's easy as pie. Yeah.
Easy
But,
choice.
and, and
Honestly,
and Bruce will tell you, sorry, and Bruce will tell you this too. The regular season championship matters more. For what
it
this
does.
SEC has been this year, for the gauntlet that it has been, is the best it's ever been. To win this conference, that means something. That means good to me. That means a heck of a lot more than winning an SEC tournament. And that's just the way I feel about it too. I'm with BP on this.
Yeah,
So
I mean, look, we will have had to have been the best team for 18 straight games. That doesn't get undone by one game. That doesn't get undone by 3 games. I mean, I'll never forget what the NCAA seeding committee came out and said when Alabama and Auburn were getting ready for the game of the century, and everyone said, "Oh, if Alabama wins tonight, do they knock Auburn off the 1 seed line?" And they said, "No, Auburn's body of work is superior to just the result of one game."
yeah,
And that's where we've been all year. We've won our clunkers. We've won some huge games. We've won some top tier competition. And we've got so many people here celebrating with us tonight. We got a bunch of folks that are watching live on YouTube. Thank you for being here. We got a bunch of folks in the chat. Mr. Beautiful made it in. Will, we got a question here from Gumptown Tigers. Tonight's staying a quad one win, right? Do you see a universe where this drops down to a quad two?
all right. Let me check real quick. It's
Because this
close.
is, I think this is going to give us our 15th if they stay up there. So we'll have to
It's
take a quick look at that.
yeah. Give me 15 seconds and I'll tell
Yeah,
you.
no worries. We're gonna check here, and what'll be interesting is today we saw the net rankings come out, and for the first time we got jumped by Duke. Now, some of that might have had to do with the Duke played a game last night where they were incredibly efficient. They absolutely dominated inferior competition like you're supposed to do, and we hadn't played our game yet, so it'll be interesting to see if that shifts around a little bit. But Will, what do you see in there on Ken Palm?
So so the net rankings, Ole Miss was going into the day was 25.
Okay,
So
they're right on
it's
the cusp.
it's right now it's a Q1 win. Now we'll see what happens tomorrow. Now, the other thing about Duke jumping us today or yesterday in net is Iowa State lost to Oklahoma State last night. The Iowa State team is
Yeah,
not is banged up pretty bad right now, and that may have dinged us a little bit. I'm not sure exactly how close the net was. So, but beating a team that has a net of 20, 25, 26 by 30 will certainly help. And of course, I think Miami, who Duke played last night, they're like in the 200s in net. I think like
yeah,
that
they're pretty
team
bad.
is horrible.
Larinaga left midseason, and they have not recovered. But
No, they quit.
ultimately what it comes down to, Will, is we got time to take care of business. And we got the competition to do it. We got a chance to make history in Lexington. We got a chance to beat a very good Texas A&M team on the road. And then we got the IBOB. It's
Yeah,
all right there in front of us still. The number one overall seed, clinching an SEC title, breaking the streak in Lexington. History lies before us. Will, thank you for jumping on. Thank you for how many times you've jumped in this season. It's so good to have you here as a voice. Folks, we're going to have his X account linked in the show notes. If you love basketball and if you love Auburn basketball, follow Shooty Hoops Will, because Shooty Hoops Will is constantly posting out the stats of every Auburn player that is active in the pros. That includes guys overseas. You want to keep up with Wendell Green Jr., ring chasing in Kosovo? Shooty Hoops Will got you. You need to know where in the G League Chuma Okiki is right now? Don't worry, Will's got you. Oh, is Walker Kessler taking on Jabari Smith Jr. tonight? Don't worry, he's going to have those stats too. Will, thank you for being here. There's one last question we have to ask before we go tonight. Are you having fun?
I'm having a lot of fun. War Eagle guys. Thanks for having me.
War Eagle, Will. It is great to have you. Good night, YouTube. Good night, America. All right, there we go.
Awesome. I'm going Saturday. So,
Yes.
yeah, so I'll be there.
Oh, listen, Will. Let me. I'm gonna shoot you a DM. We'll send you the Instagram login stuff. If you can
Yeah,
get somewhere quiet-ish, cut us some halftime content on the Instagram live with your feedback of what it's like being there in Lexington.
I'll try. I'll do my best. I hope I have some service in there. I've never been, so I am stoked to be
Well,
going.
it's gonna be a good time either way.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, YouTube. Thanks for being here again, as always. We appreciate y'all jumping in, having a good time. Will, we're gonna have to get you on probably for the SEC tournament preview so we can recap this incredible year. It's been
Okay.
so much fun making